Ben, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. You are somebody that is focused on something I'm fascinated with, which is all the brain science and as it relates to addiction. You do a lot of work. What is the name of your organization?
TMS and brain health.
TMS and brain health. I mean, that's where it's at, right? Everything's it's all in your mind.
It is. It is. Or your brain, depending on how you look at philosophy.
Right. And we know the issues are in the tissues and all that, but I am just really interested in how addiction relates to things like neuroscience when somebody sort of falls to the addiction, um, wrestles with addiction. How do we get out of it? Really, like that's the question, like what makes somebody vulnerable, what happens, and then how do we get them out of it once they're kind of there?
Right.
So I'll have all kinds of questions for you about your organization and how you help people. But I like to start with a fun little game called the lightning round because it
Okay.
sort of front loads the episode with lots of resources. So
Mhm.
I know you yourself are in recovery. So when you first started your recovery journey, what book did you find the most helpful? Did you have a favorite recovery book?
Yeah, there was actually a book that I loved by what's that guy? You know that funny British guy from Get Him to the Greek?
Oh, the Russell Brand?
Russell Brand, yeah, he wrote a book. It's called My Bookie Wookie, but it was actually about his journey, like getting sober and sort of his story. And I actually found it very, very. I really aligned with his messaging. I think a lot of other books didn't necessarily have the same kind of existential questioning that his did.
Yeah, he's actually a really smart guy. I love listening to him. He's very well
Yeah.
thought out. He's smart, so he's fun to listen to. But his book was called My Bookie Wookie.
Yeah.
I will leave links to that in the show notes. I can't wait to hear it. I
Mhm.
actually thought you were going to talk about his other book, the name of which escapes me. Do you know the one where he sort of like reinterprets the 12 steps?
No, but I've one of my like life goals is to do something similar and kind of
Right.
modernize and rewrite some of the 12 steps.
Could you please, when you do this, uh, include the women?
Yeah, yeah, I
You know
think
what
that
I'm
would be
saying?
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's as much as I love the Alcoholics Anonymous book, it's very patriarchal
Yeah.
and it's like the chapters of the wives is a little condescending.
It's a little condescending, and I think, to be honest, like we could probably condense it. I think that we could probably combine steps 1 through 3, which a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
fair.
sponsors end up doing with their sponsees anyway.
You know what's funny is I'm kind of old school where, there was like all this homework around steps 1, 2, and 3. And then I met this guy who's actually probably a little younger than me. He was like, yeah, I don't run it like that. It's like, are you powerless? Is your life unmanageable? Are you willing to do something different? Awesome. Let's do the 4th step. I was
Yeah.
like, that is brilliant. Because I have found that it was like so often if I met somebody that was in crisis, it's like, wow, we need to get to the 4th step quick so
Yeah.
that we can start sorting some stuff out to like even things out. But yes, I'm with you. Let's condense the first 3. That's super good. Okay, so we'll include that in the book. Do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you live by?
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson
Isn't
said
that Mike
that.
Tyson?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Do you have a regular self-care or recovery practice?
I would say, I work out like 5, 6 days a week, and that's my self-care.
Exercise. Are you spiritual at all? Do you have a spiritual practice?
I don't.
Okay, moving on.
I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I'm, kind of a trained scientist. I'm very
You're a
like
scientist.
analytical, and whatever can't be measured, it's very difficult for me to believe in.
Got it. I have actually interviewed atheists who are sober, and it's just such an interesting conversation because but listen, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but principles,
Mhm.
principles like kindness and compassion. I don't know if those are technically principles, but I thought it was interesting that not religion, but principles he lived by, and it kind of ends up
Yeah.
being very similar.
Yeah, I think there are definitely principles I live by in life and in business. Being authentic, being transparent, acting with integrity. Those are things that are important to me.
What's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
How to buy Bitcoin? I I don't know.
Like in your sobriety.
I don't think there's anything I wish I knew. I didn't have the worst time getting sober, so it wasn't well, I guess, which time I tried to get sober is the question.
Ah,
Probably the first time I wish I knew how much it hurt trying to do it on my own, and
oh,
how much
good
easier it
one.
was going into rehab.
Easier to go to
Yeah, let's
rehab.
go with that one.
Yeah, get
Stop
help.
trying to
Don't do it
detox
alone.
at home. Just go to rehab.
Yeah, just go to rehab. Yeah, getting help is a thing. There seems to be this idea in the mainstream like, oh, I'll just do it on my own. But there really is no merit in that because it doesn't really require any courage. And plus, if somebody else knows how to do it, why wouldn't you get the shortcut? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, get help. I like it. What do you do for fun?
Um, I don't really have much fun right now. I'm working I'm working like 24 hours a day.
Ben,
But
we're gonna have to have a talk about this.
I'm having a lot of fun. Being able to being able to slowly kind of create my vision and like see it kind of form into life out of my head. Um,
Yeah,
that's 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 really enjoyable for me.
yeah. I mean, you're building a business and living the entrepreneur life, and it is kind of fun. It's exciting to see things happen.
Yeah.
So for that, I'll put work.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. This is fun, right?
Yeah.
um, okay. Well, I appreciate you know, um, thanks for playing along.
Yeah. How did I do?
You did amazing. You get an A.
Was I the best
Well,
I've ever
let's
seen?
call let's say A minus because I would like to see you have a little fun.
Minus?
Yeah. You need to have some fun, Ben, a little bit of balance, maybe.
This is how I talk, whether I'm having fun or I'm not, and there's nothing I can do about it. This is just the way I'm always gonna sound.
You're related to the Kardashians. They all have that sort of voice. Yeah. Oh, you probably don't watch TV because you're busy working.
I don't watch TV now. I'll
I'm
catch up on
saving
basketball
lives.
highlights, and that's pretty much it.
That's
Actually,
okay.
Euphoria is a show that
Oh
I'm
my
really watching
God.
those shows.
Obsessed with Euphoria. I'm don't tell me what happened. I'm actually letting the let it build up because I like to binge just like
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah. Don't I know it? Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, that's fun. So I know that you're in recovery yourself. How old were you when you first got sober?
Um, 20.
You were 20.
Yeah, I actually
How
turned
old are you
21
now?
in rehab. I've never had like a legal drink in my life.
That's like my husband. My husband was 18 when he got sober.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he stayed sober. Never had a legal drink.
Yeah.
How old are you now? Am I allowed to ask that? I
Yeah,
guess you have to.
I'm 32.
32. That's a long time to be sober. Let me just start off. Let me start off by asking you like about your family of origin. Did you have like what happened in your childhood? Did you have people in your life who used drugs? Was there a family history or
Actually, there's like no family history of addiction that we have seen.
no family history? How old were you when you had your first? Did you have what was the first thing? Alcohol, drugs?
Yeah, I probably drank at a party in middle school, maybe at like I don't know, 13, and then I smoked weed when I was 14.
That sounds exactly like what I did. Loved the weed. Man, it's so different
You're from
today than it used to
California, right?
be. Yeah, so is it just like an
Typical.
assumption that yeah, of course you smoked weed. Yeah, no, I did. I drank first and then smoked weed, and then we were off to the races at about
Yeah.
14. Um, so what was your progression like? Did you do it occasionally, or what happened after the first?
So I started smoking weed probably on the weekends in like ninth grade, and then probably by 10th grade, I was smoking weed every day until I got sober.
Were you less energetic than you are now? Just kidding.
Probably.
Okay, yeah. So quickly you started smoking weed regularly. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in West LA.
Oh, West LA.
Mhm.
Okay, so I mean, it's probably easy to get a hold of weed, and you probably didn't need a lot of money.
Yeah, I was somehow around most of the time.
Why do you think you started smoking weed and drinking and stuff?
Um, for me, and this is, it took a long time to kind of understand a lot of this, but so like I have severe ADHD, and and I didn't know. Well, I knew kind of growing up, like I had been tested, and then when I was 20, just after I got sober, I got like a full neuropsychological evaluation. And the doctor who was testing me, she said, Ben, you have the most severe adult ADHD I've ever seen in my life. And for
Wow.
me, I think when you're in school, like when you're young, school is kind of your only barometer for success, right? Like it's the only kind of measurable thing where you know how you're doing in life. It's the only feedback that you're getting. And I didn't do well in school because I would sit there in class and the teacher would start talking and I'd zone out, and then I would have no idea what the teacher's talking about. And like I was like very slow at taking notes by hand. And so I just did really, really horribly in school, which was really frustrating for me because I'm a person
Hmm.
who generally like wants to succeed and wants to be very good at the things he's doing in life. And so I think that this, and also there's a sense of I'm different and I don't understand why, because everyone else is like able to get good grades and able to just kind of sit down and like write if they need to or do whatever. But I wasn't able to do that. And so I think that it created a lot of negative self-talk. It created a lot of just kind of general depression and anxiety about my life. And the fact that like at times I just thought I was just a complete idiot because I just couldn't
Hmm.
do these, what seemed to be basic things that everyone else was doing. And so that kind of eventually turned into like pretty like severe depressive episodes throughout my life. Um, and I think that I use ultimately is just like a way to cope with those feelings. And it took, forever, kind of going through therapy and things like that to really kind of get to the bottom of it and realize like it's not necessarily depression, even though like I had like these really, really gnarly episodes of depression. It was really like it's just my ADHD, and I just didn't understand how to manage it or how to be able to use it as like a strength instead of a weakness in a lot of ways. And so that's kind of why I think I turned to like drugs, right? Just because that was kind of the only thing that I could do.
How did your parents respond to your inability to perform well in school?
It's funny. My parents are two PhD level clinical psychologists, and
They,
they didn't respond. I mean, they weren't. They generally weren't really around to like talk about grades and things like that, but they were psychologists, so they'd always ask like how I felt about things, which is it's nice, but it's also kind of not what certain kids need. So yeah, we didn't really have those conversations necessarily.
Were you diagnosed with inattentive ADHD?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my boys have that. Yeah,
Oh,
so you're
really?
not you're not a problem in the classroom, right? So the teachers don't
Right.
typically call in the parents, and you're not problematic. So that I feel like, kids like that kind of fly under the radar a little too long.
Yeah, they often fly under the radar for a very long time, and often it's missed entirely. Women too with ADHD are often like entirely missed until they're much, much older. Sometimes
Yeah.
just missed entirely throughout their lives.
Yeah, and it is such a self-esteem eroding experience to be
Mm,
like, I mean, I'm just speaking from experience. I have it too. I was diagnosed as an adult,
yeah,
but I got labeled like scatterbrained, and just the
yeah.
stress from the parents, and just all the negative self-talk. It's a tough way to come up through school, and then you're comparing yourself to all your peers. I would imagine that
Yeah.
would be really hard.
Yeah, and I would hear like every year I would hear like the same exact thing from all my teachers, which is like, oh, you're bright, but you just need to focus, you just need to pay attention, you just need to kind of,
Just
reach your potential, blah, blah,
oh,
blah. And it's like that's not helpful. I have no idea how to do that. You're
right.
supposed to teach me how to do that. So yeah, it's really hard, and there's often like no guidance whatsoever for kids who struggle with this.
Right. It's kind of disappointing that even in today's age that the teachers are ill-equipped and uninformed about how to help these kids. And it's not, in my mind, it really wasn't, my experience wasn't really a set of like tools, like you just like, oh, that saying, you just need to focus,
Yeah,
or you have so much potential, you just need to apply yourself. That little word just was so invalidating, because and
yeah,
right? Like, didn't you feel like if I could have, I would have already?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or yeah, and I mean at the time I was like I didn't really want to accept my diagnosis to begin with, so I was like, okay, I don't even know what that means. Let's move on. Um,
How
but
old were you?
I mean, I first got tested when I was really young. I can't remember exactly how young. Maybe
Like
like,
grade school?
yeah, yeah, grade school.
Did they want to put you on Ritalin?
Yeah, I tried like Ritalin, Concerta, Focalin. I didn't like the side effects, so I stopped taking them after like a day. And then
Oh,
later in life, like after graduate school, I kind of was like, okay, maybe I should revisit this because graduate school is like really hard. And all my friends who were like neurotypical, they were like, wow, that test was so easy. And I was like, oh my God, I worked harder than I've ever worked in my life for that A.
yeah. So that's man, that is so hard. Okay, so you're a kid, you get diagnosed, they tried to put you on Ritalin, didn't like the side effects. So you just struggled all through school.
Yeah, yeah. I basically
Fair.
got like C's all through high school and even in college. I did okay. I had probably a 3.6 or 3.7 GPA, but I
That's good.
didn't all the class but so like in my major I got all A's, which is kind of typical for people with ADHD.
Right.
They can like hyper focus on the things that are interesting to them. But then they like the things that are not, generally they can't. And one thing that just like really kind of destroyed my confidence and also my faith in teachers in general is like I would tell them like, hey, I'm like I really it's really helpful for me to like have my computer so that I can take notes in class. And from high school all the way to college, there would be teachers who are like, no, you're going to get distracted. No computers in class. And every single one of those classes, I got a C or like barely passed. Like honestly, a couple of them I failed and I just begged the teachers to just like give me a passing grade.
Yeah. Oh, that's so discouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I'm sure now it seems like everyone brings their laptop to class, so hopefully that's helpful for people. But a lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize people with ADHD tend to have dysgraphia, so their handwriting is like horrible, and often like they're really slow with it. But like on a computer, I'm really fast at typing, so I can actually type at like the speed of my thoughts.
Wow, that's amazing. Very cool. So that's, I mean, kudos to you that you were able to stick with it. Did you go right from high school to college?
Um, yeah, I went from high school to college for one semester and then I dropped out.
Okay, and that's sort of like the rehab period?
Yeah, yeah, you can call it the rehab
The
period.
rehab
Yeah, that's
period.
when things just got really dark, and then it led into the rehab period.
So tell me, I'm always curious, you're using and sort of in that, lifestyle. Typically, people don't want to give it up because it's working for them or it's fun or whatever. What happened to you that you decided that you wanted to quit and get sober? Did you progress from weed to other things?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely got to the point where I was, doing anything I could just to kind of change my state. But it ultimately was not so much like a conscious decision to get sober. It was like, I keep trying to do this on my own. It's not working. Everyone in my life is mad at me. And like no one wants me to stay with them anymore. And my parents won't let me stay there anymore. So they gave me the
Wow.
ultimatum of like, okay, you got to go to rehab because you can't stay here. And I called my friend and she was like, hey, I think maybe rehab is like a good choice for you. And
Oh,
I was like, wow, because this is like someone who I would, hang out with every day. And she died, by the way. She died
why?
five
What
years ago.
happened?
She was one of my best. She overdosed.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What did she overdose from?
Heroin.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So she told you to go to rehab?
She did. Well, actually, like I had gone and I was like admitted for 1 hour and I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. So I called her and I was like, hey, pick me up. And she said like, she was like, hey Ben, I think this is actually where you should be. I think you should stay in rehab.
Why were you able to listen to her and not your parents?
Um, I think I just realized, and I didn't really listen to my parents. I still kept trying to leave for like 2 weeks. I just packed my stuff up and tell everyone I was leaving.
I'm leaving.
But I think it just made it more real because she was like, I mean, she was someone who we would like have fun together. We would get high together, and so her to tell me that like this is like I'm going, too far is it was meaningful, I guess.
Yeah, I had a friend say that to me that she was like, "Oh, I think your drinking might be a problem." And I was so highly offended. I was like, "What are you talking about? You drink as much as I do."
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
it's like, wow, you think I'm bad? That's kind of a eye opener.
yeah, totally.
Spiritual rudeness. Okay, so something happened. You decided that you could stay. What was your rehab experience like?
Honestly, it was like pretty chill. It was really not a bad experience. Like the detox was great. Highly recommend it. Much better than, doing it on your own. And then,
Medical detox?
yeah,
So that they gave you medications that would help you through the withdrawals of heroin. Is that right?
yeah.
Okay. How long does that take?
I think I was there for a week or so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this was a while ago now, so the times are fuzzy.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then I went into like an inpatient facility. It was a little kind of different than most. It was like this nonprofit Jewish rehab in LA called Bet Teshuva, which is like I'm not like a religious Jewish person, and also I kept trying to get my parents to send me to like the fancy Malibu places, and they of course sent me to like the nonprofit. um,
The no frills kind.
but honestly, like I think the most helpful thing about it was kind of the community there, but also like meeting people who were my age, who are still like some of my best friends today. And realizing that you can have fun in sobriety was kind of the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, that was a big deal to me too. You kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to have fun again when
Yeah.
you first get sober.
Yeah.
That's important. Did they take you to like 12-step meetings or anything?
Yeah. So I got a sponsor. I actually found there was like so I used to like go to meetings like before I got sober, and I would be like I would be like high, and I would, be in the back of the room, but I still kind of knew that like this is something I should be doing. And I would always see this guy who I knew from high school, and I hated him from high school, but it was just because like he always seemed so happy all the time, and I was like, why is this asshole like smiling and laughing? So
Oh, fuck
then
that guy.
I like right one of the meetings that the rehab took me to, I ran into him and I just asked him straight up if he would be my sponsor.
Wow. So you were going to meetings high. So you had been wanting to quit using.
Yeah, I mean, I think what people don't realize about addiction is that it's not just like you don't just want to get sober or you don't want to get sober. You have those feelings vacillating all day long,
Hmm.
multiple times a day, right? Where
Good point.
you can feel both at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's one of my kind of issues in general with like a lot of the way we talk about substance abuse is like you have to be ready, right? What does that mean? You can be ready in 1 minute and not ready in the next minute.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah, because on one hand, like I know from my own experience, like I wanted to be sober, but I would have all these feelings come up. Like had no coping skills really. And
Yeah,
so it was like, well, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to take care of myself, to handle this. I was, self-medicating. So that makes a lot of sense. Want to,
yeah,
don't want to, want to, don't want to. Yeah. Then it became had to for some of
yeah.
us.
I heard
Yeah.
I heard one person say that being an addict is like having an existential crisis every 2 hours, and I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's terrible. Okay, so you go to rehab, you detox, rehab, so your exposure to 12-step meetings, you find somebody that you get a sponsor. And how did you work around the whole higher power thing?
I think I just wanted to do, I think the what motivated me to move past it is I just at the end of the day, like I didn't think it was gonna work, and I just wanted, and like when I was like, hey, this didn't work, I didn't want someone to be like, well, you never did the steps. I wanted to be like, fuck you, I tried the steps, it still didn't work. So I was
Hmm.
just like, okay, I'm gonna kind of suspend disbelief and just do it.
Got it. Okay. So you just kind of went with the flow and you did all the
Yeah, I mean,
steps.
because you can accept a higher power, you cannot accept a higher power. Nothing in your life changes from, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, there's no difference in your kind of, in really anything in life, whether you choose to accept a higher power or not. There's a difference in like the
That's
way you feel and your psyche potentially.
mhm. I mean, that was not my experience, but it's interesting that you don't have to believe to be able to get sober is the thing.
Hmm.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have, yeah. So, okay, so you're sober, and did you continue to go to meetings for a while, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, I did. I continued with like the AA path for probably 5 years.
That's a good long stretch. And okay, so you stayed
Yeah.
sober, you worked the steps. Was that beneficial for you to do the 12 steps?
I'm glad I did them. I don't regret doing them. I can't, looking back, I can't think of anything I personally like gained from doing them. But I think like the general, I think especially in the beginning, like going to like speaker meetings was really helpful for me just because, finally I was with other people who kind of understood like the depths of hell that I was going through,
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
everything else that kind of comes along with the territory. So I think just from like knowing I'm not alone, that standpoint, the
Oh
steps can
yeah.
be, the whole AA can be really helpful.
Yeah, no, you're not alone. Okay, so when did you actually start the organization that you're with now? You founded the TMS, right?
Yeah, so basically I after getting sober, I went back to school. I studied psychology in undergrad, and I was really interested, and during school, kind of at the tail end of it, I had worked a lot with neurofeedback.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's basically like a type of treatment where you put these electrodes that record brain activity
Hmm.
onto people's scalps,
Hmm.
and those electrodes are plugged into a computer. And what happens is you can basically tell the computer to like reward certain frequencies that are associated with like resilience, for instance, or kind of like emotional regulation. Um, and so basically people would look at a screen and the screen would like dim or get brighter depending on how they were doing. So if they were doing well, it would get brighter. If they kind of weren't doing well and were very dysregulated, it would get darker. And so you do this for like 30 minutes a day, a couple times a week for like 20-ish sessions. And over time you learn how to in a way control your own brain activity. So I was doing this at a few substance abuse facilities as the technician, and I realized that I really wanted more of like a hard science understanding of it all. So I applied to a master's program at Columbia for neuroscience. I got in, I went to it, and during school my focus generally became like this broad area called neuromodulation. So all of these non-pharmaceutical ways to create real changes in the brain. Um,
Non-pharmaceutical ways.
right,
Wow. Okay, that's really cool.
right. So that was my specialty, and in that category of treatments, transcranial magnetic stimulation or TMS is kind of the most well-researched and well-regarded of those. So I sort of became an expert in TMS during my time in school.
So is that sort of like I've seen, images where people put like a cap on their head and it has all those little things on it. Is that what it is? It's not actually things that you would put like over someone's hair, right? It's like a cap.
So you put like a swim cap on and then
Oh,
the technicians will like make a few measurements, but you
uh-huh.
actually place, it looks kind of like a paddle on someone's scalp, and it creates
Mhm.
this magnetic field that can literally turn on these parts of the brain underneath the paddle. So it's typically used for depression, and
Mhm.
it's been FDA approved for depression. And we think of like depression as this serotonin deficiency or neurotransmitter imbalance. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
But basically, like the neuroscience shows that's not really the case. That doesn't really fully explain everything that's going on in depression. And what's really happening is these specific parts of the brain are underactive. So there's less blood flow, there's less cellular metabolism, and what TMS does is it literally turns those parts of the brain back on. So it'll increase blood flow, increase metabolism, and over time, over about 6 weeks, the symptoms of depression basically go away, and these parts of the brain are, fully active again.
And so when somebody experienced this treatment, is it like done? Like, and once the brain is sort of like activated in those areas, the people that experience the treatments, do they need to come back occasionally, or is it
It's rare that they need to come back. Like 90%
really?
of the people, they can just do like one and done. So they'll do like
That's
36
amazing.
sessions in about 6 to 8 weeks, and then they're just done. But
36?
yeah, 36 total is like the standard course of TMS.
Okay. And is this like who's a good candidate for this type of training? Is it for people that have treatment resistant depression?
Yeah, generally. So usually if someone has tried like a couple different medications and they've been in talk therapy before and the depression just isn't getting better, then TMS is a great option.
And what if somebody is taking medication, but they don't want to be? Can they get off of the medication?
Yeah, they potentially can. It's between them and the doctor how they want
It
to kind of arrange
depends.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
everyone's
to be
different.
to be
Yeah.
honest, like some people can, some people it's pretty hard to get off of antidepressant medications. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
a lot of people
It
get
is. Yeah.
discontinuation syndrome. And you can have like it'll feel like sort of brain zaps is a very common
Yeah.
symptom or um so some people choose to get off their medication. Most of the time when people see us, they just want to get better. So then we just focus on
Right.
getting them better. And then once they're better, they can decide if they want us to help them like create a taper plan or if they want to just keep taking whatever they're taking.
Oh, that's fascinating. What other kinds? And so, are you treating people with depression that, or addiction specifically? Or the reason I ask is I'm thinking a lot of people use drugs and alcohol to try to self-medicate, right? And then, hopefully they bring in professionals and things like that. But so does this TMS help people with addiction because it addresses the underlying issue of depression?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
The
It just
depression, the underlying issue is that there's a brain imbalance, right? And so
brain
what
power.
TMS does is it fixes that imbalance.
Do people need to go through any kind of psychotherapy in addition, or how do you address that?
And they don't need to. They definitely can if they want to, but they don't. Usually when they see us, they've tried therapy before. So telling
Right.
them to, and honestly, like a lot of people see us who have been in therapy for years and
Years.
cycle through multiple therapy. So, as helpful as therapy is, telling someone to do more therapy after failing everything kind of falls on deaf ears at times.
Yeah, I could see that. So, what other? I was looking at your website, and there's other treatments. I'm fascinated with like the MAPS organization that is using psychedelics and things like that to treat like treatment resistant depression and things. And I noticed that there is a course for ketamine treatment. I don't really. I knew ketamine to be like a street drug, and I've
Yeah.
been aware that now it has clinical uses for different things. Can you kind of give me an overview of like when ketamine would be appropriate and how it's used?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really the same population as TMS, like people who have tried the usual medication route and are not getting benefits. It can be really effective for depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Typically, there's just a course of about 8 infusions. And then the downside to ketamine is that there often is some kind of maintenance required. So people do have to come back once in a while for like a booster type of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas TMS, the effects are more long term. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll do a combination of both at once, which can be helpful for a lot of people.
Okay, that was kind of going to kind of be my next question. So if you offer it, I would imagine that, you know, these are when people come in, they see doctors who develop a treatment plan for them. So they would be sort of
Exactly.
triaged into like what's appropriate for which treatment.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have sort of like a few different levels of care and a few different programs. So when people come in, we can create like a fully personalized treatment plan for them. And no one's treatment plan looks the same. For some people, it
Right.
could be like a combination of TMS and therapy and, like routine psychiatry and medication management. For other people, it could be like neurofeedback and ketamine and therapy. It's totally different for every person.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. Where are your facilities?
Yeah, so we have one in Santa Monica, West LA area, another in
Hmm.
downtown LA, and we recently just opened in Sedona, Arizona, and Las
Ooh,
Vegas.
Sedona and LV. That is
Mhm.
super cool. Where can people find more information about this?
Our website is www.tmsbrainhealth.com.
Brain health. That is fascinating. Was there anything I didn't ask that you feel would be important to share for people who are curious about maybe the brain science behind addiction, or what kinds of treatments they should be considering? What
You
didn't
know,
I
I,
ask that I should have?
I think you asked some good questions. I think, my personal opinion is that there's no addiction treatment without mental health treatment, because every single
100%.
person who has issues with addiction has an underlying mental health disorder that's
Mhm.
most likely not being addressed. And so, as many times as people go to rehab and do seeking safety over and over, it's not going to do much until you really address the underlying mental health.
100%. Yeah, it's all about what is compelling somebody to use. And in my mind, in my experience, there's some sort of underlying trauma, and that needs to be addressed so they don't feel compelled. And I think most people have like this disconnect, like they know what they should be doing, but they just don't do it. And there's like this disconnect. It's like, why am I not doing what I
Right.
know that is good for me? And so that's why I think it's so important to pull in the professionals, and they can teach you about self-care and getting the right treatments that you need.
Right.
Um, so when somebody goes through a program like this, is there, I would imagine, since everyone's different, there's different ongoing programs and support.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely different there's different levels of support depending on what people need, but oftentimes they'll continue with like their therapist or the psychiatrist we have, after, if they want to continue with medication, for instance, they tend to continue to see our psychiatrist even once they finish the program. And then if they started seeing our therapists also, they generally continue to see them as well.
That's very cool. Well, I certainly appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. This stuff is all very fascinating to me, the brain science and the different tools that people have now. And, congratulations on your continued sobriety. And, the work that you're doing is really important. There just needs to be as many options as people need. So all this is really fascinating to me. I think you're doing really great work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I'll look forward to speaking with you again, and I hope you have a great weekend.
All right. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.